You're watching Leafs Morning Take with host Nick Alberga and former NHLer Jay Rosehill. The show starts now.
T-minus 1 week until the NHL trade deadline, and unbelievably, we have a Maple Leafs trade to talk about. It's Nick Alberga and Carter Hutton, the Friday edition of Leafs Morning Take presented by Betano. What's going on, Huts?
Hey, nice. Thanks for having me on, buddy. You didn't even have to wear your Let's Make a Trade shirt today. They did it for you before you even asked.
I couldn't believe it. Watched that Leafs game against Arizona. I will tell you, we're going to get into that game. Couple things I can pull from that one. Wasn't too pleased, but that's okay. They got the 2 points. They moved on. And yeah, Ilya Lyubushkin is now reacquired. He's a new member of the Toronto Maple Leafs yet again. First and foremost, I alert all of you out there to go check out our reaction. Rosie and I got together right after that trade was consummated. Rosie's wearing a backwards hat, looks great, and we broke down the trade. So make sure to go check that out at the Leafs Nation 401. But I was waiting for your thoughts. You played with Ilya Lyubushkin, so you know what this guy's all about, right?
Yeah, I love it. Labush is, I was with him in Arizona for a while there. Great guy, great Russian. I don't know for you who don't know what that means, but sometimes Russians can be on their own page and they can be hard to buy in. But this guy is a North American player, a good guy, a family man, just wears it on his sleeve. And trust me, it's not always glitz and glamour with Bush, but he's a guy that you want come playoff time. He's a guy that is going to get in the trenches. Like I was touching on earlier, he's going to block a shot with his face and he'll be right back out there the next shift. And he's a guy that they didn't give up a lot to get. And these are guys you need, depth guys, especially with Giordano going down. This is awesome. I love this trade. I know everyone complains about everything, but this is a good depth trade for the Leafs here.
Man, it's so Toronto. Like reading social media before starting and executing this show today, I cannot believe the backlash over an acquisition of a depth defenseman for a 3rd and 6th round pick. And maybe it speaks to the market, and maybe it speaks to why the fuck a lot of players don't want to play here. Like it's an absolute joke that people are bitching and complaining about prospects and picks that won't be in the league until Austin Matthews is like 40 years old. It makes no sense. This team is trying to win a Stanley Cup right now. They had a guy they're familiar with. They had a guy who's going to add some depth. He's an upgrade on a couple guys they have already. I think it's a no-brainer. And on top of that, I think it's shrewd business by Brad Treliving, retaining 75%, involving Carolina in that deal to give up that 6th rounder as well. I thought it was a shrewd piece of business because to me, it means they're not done between now and next Friday.
Yeah, it's typical, armchair quarterback, right? Just always, I would have did this, I would have did that. But this guy is a playoff player in the sense of he can just eat up minutes. He's not going to do anything. We're not worried about offense. How doesn't anybody understand that that's complaining out there? They're going to score goals. They're going to get their looks. This is a guy that you can play. He's going to play simple minutes. He plays hard minutes. He's not going to be good. He's going to chip the puck out. When the puck gets in the offensive zone, he's going to get off the ice. He's going to fire it back in the corner, let them work. So I like it. I like what he did. I like Treliving going out and making this move, not giving up a lot. And like you touched on, you're in a state now where you have one of the best players in the world, one of the best goal scorers, if not the best goal scorer in the world. You're trying to win, in right now, in the immediate future here. And this is a good trade, but it's Toronto, Nicky. Is anybody ever happy?
No, definitely not. I can speak for myself too, but it's so intriguing to me. Like even when you look at the specific individuals who do not like Ilya Lyubushkin, it's majority the analytics community who didn't like Simone Benoit, and Simone Benoit is Toronto's top defenseman. Like arguably, you can make that case. The guy's been an absolute machine, and it's perfect. I have you, I have Rosie, I have Stewie. You guys have been in an NHL room. Can you speak to chem? I love the chem conversation, chemistry, because number crunchers out there, and I'm not taking anything away from him. I think it's a big part of this game, especially in 2024. But chemistry for me is so big. Case in point, the New York Rangers last year, and then case in point, other teams who whine and weave and find their way to a Stanley Cup. It's all got to make sense on the ice, not just on paper.
Yeah, for sure. It's got to work in the room, and you got to get to the thing where you're peaking at the right time, right? We touch on that a lot where you see a lot of teams that are playing playoff hockey that get into the playoffs and they're already rolling along, but that starts in the room, right? It starts with the guys being able to recognize the situation that they're in and be ready and prepared. Where I see this Leaf, they've added a lot of key guys, like even Revo last night, the guys are going nuts for him. We're going to touch on that. Yeah. You see that that's galvanizing this team. Things like that, where sometimes you add different superstars into lineup. It's hard because there's only so many seats at the table. When you add a guy like Lyubushkin, he knows his role. He doesn't care about the glitz, the glamour, all the stuff. He's going to just play inside it. And that's important in this team. And he's a guy that you don't have to worry about. He's definitely not going to be a huge voice in the locker room because you can barely understand him. But that's a good thing at times, right? You have guys like, Simone Benoit, you touched on, Jake McCabe. This guy's a warrior. These are guys that you're going to go out every single night and they're going to put it on the line. And that brings the stars together. The stars are going to be the stars. Trust me. These are the guys that are going to help you win come playoff time.
The fascination to me, and I think I totally agree with what you're saying. Like Lyubushkin's a guy who, what does he build at like 6'2", 200? But like I find like he has those moments where he plays heavier. Like you played with him, as you mentioned. Like he's strong on the puck, isn't he?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. He lugs it around. He's definitely not. I guess when you think of like your cookie cutter, like you watch a hockey player, especially nowadays, you watch like Nylander or Matthews, these guys that are so high end. When you're watching Lyubush drag it around, it looks slow and it looks bulky, but like that doesn't matter. He's not an open ice player. He's a tight area guy. He's going to pin guys. He's going to make it hard in front of your net. He's going to create space for your goalies. And he just plays a simple, smart game, which is kind of what you want, right? And at times it's not going to look as pretty because he's hanging it out there. But I think at the same time, this is what they needed.
Definitely. And I think it's important to preface and talk about the fact that we're still a week away from the trade deadline. Again, the uproar on social media is insane, knowing the deadline is a week away and knowing the price tag they paid for a guy that they're familiar with. It's baffling. And I guess all these people just want Mitch Marner as the number one defenseman on this team. And surely we're going to have that conversation too. Speaking of conversations, we have Darren Dreger, TSN, Hockey Insider, coming up in about 25 minutes. What's next for the Maple Leafs? I guess that's the question here, no?
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what they do, right? Are they done? I still obviously would like more defensemen. I think the goalie, Joseph Woll obviously was great last night. I think that is in place. It's pretty much who's going to get hot now. But, where do they add? Bertuzzi's playing well now. They've got some little depth, a little more confidence, I think, in that bottom six scoring. Nyes is playing great. And obviously the big dogs are going to be the big dogs. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens down the line. And, how committed are they this season? Like, what do they want to give up, right? Because I think last night was a fairly good trade that isn't going to hurt them because a third and sixth round pick, do they even really make it to the NHL? Do they play in the NHL? We'll see how that plays out because you start talking about giving up 6 round picks, you're not really giving up a whole heck of a lot.
It's not about commitment either. Like I think you look at this year's market with due respect to the market, it's dog shit. Okay. And if the Leafs, and people are making a lot of the whole thing I put out last night, how Cowan and Minton are essentially off the table and they're looking at other prospects to potentially deal in trades. It makes sense. Anybody outside of Noah Hannafin, like it just doesn't make sense. And Hannafin doesn't want to play in Canada. Sounds like doesn't want to really sign in Toronto. Like it just wouldn't make sense for a rental. And that's where I think the hangup is. Like I think truly, if they found a guy who made sense, who they could keep past this season and know they could keep past this season, I think they would do that. But I think you look at the market, I'm like, it's pretty understandable why. And I think they have to work with that market. So I think patience is a virtue. We'll see what happens over the next week or so. When it comes to the Maple Leafs, again, if you're watching right now, please subscribe at the Leafs Nation 401. Hammer that like button as well. If you're listening to us in the podcast form, you can search Leafs Morning Take, will pop up. Make sure to leave us a 5-star review. I noticed a couple of you the last little while have done so. Appreciate that. A 5-star review would be fantastic with maybe your thoughts on how you feel about the podcast so far. Brought to you by DoorDash. It's time for the appetizer. For a limited time, our listeners can get 25% off, up to $10 in value, and zero delivery fees on their first order of $15 or more when you download the DoorDash app. Enter code NATION25. That's code NATION25, all in uppercase. 25% off your first order with DoorDash. Offer valid in Canada, subject to change. Terms apply. So I couldn't believe this, man. They finally beat the Arizona Coyotes in regulation on home ice. The first time since October 17, 2002, which weirdly enough was the night Matthew Nyes was born. He had a goal and an assist last night.
Yeah. What is the odds of that, right? What a crazy little situation. And been crazier that they haven't beat the Arizona Coyotes, because you got to think in those 20 years, how many years have they been good? Not many. They've had a couple good runs, the Mike Smith days where they really had a great playoff run, but even at that, they weren't like a powerhouse team by any means. So it is wild, and it's about time. And one was last night. I figured it was going to be an easy win last night, but obviously they like to do it in Leaf style and make you sweat it out. But obviously it's nice to get that win, especially bouncing back and getting the dub. Those are ones as a pro, an ex-pro now, I'm on the other side of it here talking to my computer screen, is the fact that you just find a way to win a game, right? It doesn't matter how at times you just like win it and move on. Yes, there's going to be a lot of things in video you could clip and be like, oh my God, this was horrible. I watched Tavares there in the D zone at one point late into the game. I thought he was wearing roller skates. It was tough to watch for me, but obviously one of those ones, just get the win and move on.
Yeah, man. Like, again, maybe it's because it's Arizona and they trigger me. Like, ask Rosie last year. I am triggered by Arizona. That's the one team when the Leafs lose to, I cannot believe it. And watching that game, and maybe it's because I had the puck line, which ultimately hit, but I'm like, what are they doing? It was 3-0. That game was put to bed. that they let Arizona back in. Like, they stopped playing. We've seen that so many times. I'm not going to be as harsh on them today. They found a way to get the 2 points. They've won 8 of 9. That's the good news. But as you mentioned, there's a lot to clean up heading into their tilt with the New York Rangers on Saturday night.
Yeah, it's obviously you're going to get a much better hockey team than the New York Rangers, and you're talking about a team in Arizona without their star Clayton Keller too, right? So it's going to get even more depth. There's going to be more star power when when we're playing the New York Rangers. For me, it was just the fact of what I really like. My takeaway, obviously, you watch Woll, just calm, good presence, and I think the pushback, Reeves getting into it. There's a lot of good storylines. Bertuzzi scoring. Also, I had on my daily faceoff, I had the Leafs in regulation and the under. So Bertuzzi hitting the post there right at the last split second of the game was touching, was very nice for me. So I'm going to send him a thank you card real shortly. But a lot of stuff to build on. I think at one point the crowd was going absolutely bananas after the fight, and that was something I enjoyed. Obviously, not being there, but just like maybe this is something we can get into here. Let's actually go to the game and support these guys and have fun and not criticize every single moment, right? So I think that's something maybe we can build off of as a fan base.
I think the betting gods were finally in my favor last night because I had the under in that game, and it links me back to last Saturday. I had the over 7.5, and JT did that curl around with the empty net that I still am mystified what the fuck that was. But the hockey gods, I guess, the betting gods auto-correcting last night. Bertuzzi hitting the post. That was wild. That was weird. But Joseph Woll comes back. So stabilizing, man. Like, I put out a tweet after the first 20, and I was ready and prepared for it. I don't know what it is, but Joseph Woll has it. Like, he makes me feel comfortable watching Maple Leafs games, which I can't say I've felt in like 10 years. I'll be honest.
Yeah, he is. He's calm. He's got a good presence, and what a good demeanor too. You even see his interview after the game, and he's just like, and before the game when they're touching on his injury, and he's just like, we're past that. We're moving on. We're on to the present. And after the game, like for me, the difference, like apples to apples, when I see Samsonov getting, that actually pissed me off the other night when Samsonov gets interviewed and he's already in his suit. And it was like literally right after the game. And I'm like, I was having like PTSD of like being a player and getting into it. Cause I remember I had a moment one time with Rasmus Dahlin, because Ristolainen used to always, when I played in Buffalo, he'd always get out of there really quick. I remember one time Rasmus Dahlin went to do it. He was 18 years old, a rookie. And I remember grabbing him, and I was so hot because we lost, obviously, shocker in Buffalo. And I just started giving it to him. Like, what are you doing, man? Go get in the gym. There's something you can do. Like, even if you don't want to go do something, go lie on a foam roller. Like, Samsonov's already in and out of there. And like, for me, that's just like tough to watch as a pro and as an athlete, where I see Joseph Woll there, like, you're being a professional. You have to answer the media. This is part of the gig. And he has such a good demeanor. He's so calm, level-headed, which is something I love, especially in this market, moving forward with him going to start pushing the pace. So it'll be interesting to see how Samsonov takes this heat with the big guy back.
Well, that's something I want to get into in the next segment, like who starts on Saturday. So keep your answer for that one. But yeah, I was pleased with the return of Joseph Woll. I mentioned the Leafs yet again took their foot off the gas in the second half of that game. If it weren't for Joseph Woll in the last 10 minutes, I think that game gets at least to overtime. This is what this guy brings, man. He's a closer, and the best thing about it, he got through the game coming back from the high ankle sprain, his first win since November 30th. And this is the most pleasant news. It could be like the biggest deadline pickup of all teams. I'm not kidding. To bring back your potential number one goaltender the way the Maple Leafs have, to rectify and solidify that position, I think is huge.
Yeah, for sure. I agree. And I think it's going to be interesting to see. I like the idea of having a platoon of goalies when you talk about Boston and you talk about these teams that, have two guys going. You look, Decord's been awesome in Seattle, and Grubauer got a shuttle last night. There's other teams that are going to push with two guys now, right? And try to get them to peak at the right time. I think this is a good internal competition, because at the end of the day, they're really not competing against each other other than themselves, man. Go out there, play well. I know people have touched on this all the time about Samsonov. Like, he doesn't like when someone's behind him, pushing him, but like, man, it's the NHL. Like, there's always going to be somebody pushing you. This is like the biggest BS I've ever heard. Like, poor him, like, move on with it. Where I love this. I'm a big Woll fan. Like, I watch him last night, even late in the game when they're closing on him. Like, he's never out of position. He makes them come to him. It's going to go through him. If anything, it's got to be one of those goals that's going to be a high-end, really skilled goal. He doesn't slide out of position. He lets it come to him. And I love watching his game. And, man, I'm excited getting him back. Yeah, as long as he can stay healthy, obviously.
In a perfect world, he starts game one of the Stanley Cup playoffs. Obviously, a lot of racetrack until then, but I mean, he is the best goalie this team has. And I'm including Matt Murray, by the way, which apparently he's still in the conversation. Maybe we can get the 4-on-1 with Murray at some point on this show and get him on. But Mark Giordano leaves that game in the first, does not return, head injury. By the sounds of it, it didn't expedite the Lyubushkin trade. They needed depth to begin with, but it's been a tough season in general for Giordano. The last 3 weeks, losing his father, now getting hurt. You sort of forget the guy's 40. And I mean, coming back from an injury like that, just speculating, that's going to be a tough one.
Yeah, well, he's 40 years old, right? And I know he's super fit. Like, I got a
Yeah.
chance to play there, and I was scared to go in the shower with him with my shirt off because he's just absolutely shredded. And I'm 38 now, and sometimes I think I blow a hammy just getting out of bed. So it's impressive what he does still. You know, he obviously takes really good care of himself, and he's like a genetic freak. But at the end of the day, like, there's no matter how good you are, time catches up with you, right? It's one of those things. It's hard. Obviously, he's dealt with a lot this year on and off the ice, but once those injuries start to creep in, it's tricky, right? And obviously, I love the guy. I think everybody loves him everywhere he's gone in his career. But at this point, you know, you need that depth because, you know, they're looking at a long playoff run. And that's the hopes. Because for me this year, more than ever, there isn't a team that's just identified themselves as like the cup favorite. You know, maybe you talk about, I don't know, like from my standpoint, if Colorado gets like some depth scoring. But other than that, like the West is pretty tight. And the East, like I think it's a coin flip who can play well at the right time.
I think it's Florida and everybody else, but I've been maintaining that for a couple of months. I just love the jam that team plays with. Health is going to be a thing for them, and I want to see who they add between now and next Friday. But I just think they're a different breed. The Florida Panthers, you come out with a 4-3 shootout victory on Thursday. So mentioned Giordano went down. McCabe missed extended time in the second period, which here we go again. We revisited the Mitch Marner experiment on the blue line. I'm probably the only one who feels this way. I hate it. I can't stand it. I know people are breaking down the video and the numbers and saying this guy's incredible. I just know Mitch Marner is going to use it against the Leafs when it comes to negotiations. Pay me like a number one D, pay me like a top flight forward, and I want $17 million a year. Obviously, I'm being sarcastic, but what was your overall breakdown of Mitch Marner on the back end?
I think he's good, but like I just don't think a guy like that actually, if he's going to play at the wear and tear of what he's going to see all the time, like he's going to get run through the boards nonstop, having to pick up pucks with pressure on the forecheck. But he is a Swiss Army knife. I will give him that. This kid can do anything. I would be surprised if he can. He saved the goal the other night there. It was going in and hit his stick. And I find he's just so smart and he has such good edge work that he's elusive and he can make plays. He sees the rink so well. But for me, it's like, I get it. He can fill in at the time, but like people that like think he can do it every game in, game out, just get out of here. It's fluff. It's just, I don't know. I think it's nice to have guys like that can fill in, but he, you know, he looked really good, but it doesn't surprise me because the guy can play anywhere on the rink because he's so smart and he's so good on his edges, Nicky.
Everybody stop. Mitchie McCarr writes John Gallagher, producer Vic, Shohei Omarner. I can't deal with this. I don't know. I think he's great, but again, like they're a team that's looking for size on the blue line. Like Sheldon Keefe even went out of his way last night to be like, yeah, I was actually thinking about it even before Giordano got hurt. Like, what are we doing here? Like, is this team trying to win a Stanley Cup, or why don't we go with a 5D set next time? Let's roll 5 defensemen on the ice at the same time. Why don't we do that?
How's he going to do when he's got to get the puck in his D zone? He's getting pounded by every single they're going to just dump the puck in his corner. They're going to run him out of the game, right? So that's like now you're exposing one of your best players to that, right? You think just touched on it, Matthew Kachuk in the chat here, like literally a perfect example. Imagine these guys are going to tee off on him on D. So I think it's funny. I get it. It's so Toronto. It's so crazy. It's like he could do that. Like, you know, I don't know. It's so wild.
My point on Twitter was like, why not try Nylander there? Why not try Matthews there? Like, I understand the edge work of Mitch Marner, but they have this fascination with rolling this guy out in the blue line, and it just makes no sense to me. Like, they even when they have 6 healthy defensemen, let's go to Mitch Marner. Like, there must be some combo in his contract or something where it's like, I'll resign for $10.5 million if you give me 17 shifts on the blue line. I don't get it. I think I'm in the minority on that front, but the Leafs won the game. It's all that matters. Speaking of which, we saw. And I speculated we were going to see this because of Saturday night's game upcoming with Matt Rempe and the New York Rangers. Ryan Reeves, I think, with a tune-up bout, we'll call it, against Liam O'Brien, who is a tough customer, as you know. But it was Reeves' first fight since the second game of the season against Marcus Foligno, and I think his first decisive decision. Like, I think he was unanimous. Reeves won that fight. He was good.
Yeah, I don't want to act like I know anything about fighting. We touched on it earlier. I went in a fight, so anyone want to look it up? I'm 1-0 in my professional career, but honestly, like with Revo, I see this. He gets the advantage because off the draw, O'Brien tries to get in right away and get tight. I played with Liam O'Brien. He's a fearless guy, right? He's not in that heavyweight. He's in the heavyweight class, but he just is fearless. He'll fight anyone. A great guy. He's from the East Coast, unbelievable guy. But Revo is so big and strong. You can see him right away. He fights to get back from him. And he uses his reach. And then once he gets him spinning, it's just bad news. He always used to do that when we were in St. Louis. He'd fight guys and man, he loves he's like a heel in the WWE. He gets up, he flexes, he's doing everything. He loves it. So it's always good. I love when Revo fights, and obviously the first one in a while, but again, he hasn't played and been a part of it, but you can see how excited the boys were on the bench.
Oh, I love that, man. Austin Matthews was so horned up. He was, look at this. He was so horned up, man. And they're telling me in the media and everybody on social media, they're telling me the players don't love this type of player and this shit. Come on, give me a break, man. Like this just jacks a bench. I mean, you were a goalie in this league. You get jacked up by this shit, no?
Oh, yeah, especially in a big game, too. You know what? I did get affected a bit by once I got to know guys well. I never want to see anyone get, like, knocked out or, like, hurt bad, right? Because you live every day to day with them. But these guys know what they're doing. They know how to protect themselves. Maybe not Rempe as much, but these guys do a good job of protecting themselves. And it is something that is important to the game in the sense of, like, you know, you can send a message to your team. They're going to protect your players, right? Like, this isn't going to go on tonight, right? Like, obviously, Jay can touch on it. He lived a life, right? It's a tough way to make a living, but these guys are loved by their teammates. And you're telling me that was the loudest that arena's been in the whole season. And you're telling me, let's get rid of fighting. Like, I know it has its time and place, but like, man, it's fun, man. It brings energy to the game.
Dude, this is the last time I'll talk about this, but you could hear a pin drop in that building with 10 minutes remaining. And maybe it was the precarious position the team found suddenly itself in where it was 3-0, then boom, it's 3-2. But all you could hear, I don't know if it was DeMar DeRozan's daughter yelling from last year when the Raptors in that whole return where she kept yelling every time they're at the free throw line and jinxed the fuck out of them. And then Chicago won that game. But that's all that was audible on the feed on TV was like a girl yelling, and it was driving me insane. On top of the fact that the Leafs are puking all over themselves in the last 10 minutes. Like it was like watching a terrible horror movie, man.
That's actually hilarious because I was sitting downstairs watching the game in my living room and my kids were in bed and I muted my TV because I was like faintly could hear the yelling. And I was like, are one of my kids up right now yelling? What's going on? I actually did it. I'm so stupid. Well, maybe because I stop pucks for a living, but I muted my TV like 2 or 3 times and finally was like, man, it's coming from the game. Like, what the hell is going on over there? Like, it was embarrassing.
It was some kid was like howling like a coyote. Like it was like howling like a coyote. It was bizarre, man. You know, it was also not bizarre. Alex Kerfoot scoring in his return. It's like he had an agreement with Mitch Marner. Hey, can you put it on my tape shorthanded? I'll go in. And Joey Woll, you're not going to move. I'm going to put it over your shoulder. Like, I couldn't believe that I didn't put more money on plus 450 for Alex Kerfoot to score a goal. That was the easiest money I'll ever make in my life, I think.
Yeah, there's not many times at night I think about you, Nick, but I was thinking about you when he scored that goal because I was like, you always talk about like the revenge tour, and like it's been everybody, right? Every single guy that was a Leaf comes into Leafland, scores when they're playing at Toronto. So yeah, it was obviously a clear-cut breakaway, nice little chip play, but yeah, obviously one that we don't want to get used to seeing, the clean-cut breakaway from like the red line in, no problem, no pressure, no nothing.
Man, I was laughing because I mentioned on yesterday's show, I've been trying to get Alex Kerfoot on the show, and the only reason why he hasn't come on is because this team can't win a fucking game. They've lost 14 in a row, and Arizona legitimately came back, and they're like, yeah, we're not feeling good right now, and we're going to pass. Like 3 weeks before, they're like, yeah, we'll probably do it. And so the tune changed because they can't win a game. But that was the lock of the night. Alex Kerfoot, he got an acknowledgement on the scoreboard, the tribute, whatever you want to call it. So the Leafs win it. Matthews, number 53, on pace for 74. Another big night for Nylander, 9-game point streak, 7 goals, 17 points. The guy's an absolute beast. And this team is on fire at the right time, 23-6-2 against the West. They've won 8 of 9. Wendy's is letting you win real food with your fantasy teams this year and daily face-off. For those of you who smoke the competition, Wendy's is rewarding you with weekly prizes. They'll have you winning despite your lack of team-building skills. Download the Wendy's app and score yourself 150 bonus reward points on your first order and grab a sweet victory for the mouth-watering jaws of defeat, along with some fresh, never frozen beef. Sign up to play daily face-off to win weekly prizes like the spicy chicken sandwich from Wendy's and the Wendy's app. So it's the Leafs, it's the Rangers on Saturday night, game 3 of the 5-game homestand. The Leafs have split the first 2. They've won 8 of 9, as mentioned, the third and final meeting of the season. The road team has won the previous 2 outings. Who starts in goal for you, Hutz?
I think it's Samsonov. I know Woll played really well last night, but I just think that you're not going to go right back to Woll again. Like, he's just coming off injury. I think Woll is your guy. Like, if I'm gun to my head, if I got to pick a guy that's going to be your guy come playoffs, it's going to be Woll. But like right now, it makes the most sense to go back to Samsonov because I wouldn't say he's lost the crease by any means. I didn't think he was great last game, and he just won 6 straight. And in those 6 straight, his save percentage was under 900. Not great. They're playing better defense and they're scoring, but it's just not. you just don't want to run with him yet. I think you got to push both guys and just let it kind of play itself out. And at the end of the day, I think it's going to be Woll, but I think next game you got to go with Samsonov, and it's going to be a good test for him because this Rangers team is for real.
You got to be comfortable in all 17 goalies that you have on your roster, right? Martin Jones remains to be seen what happens to him. Like, I like how this is already playing out, that they have a 3-goalie system and their number 3 is just nowhere to be found. But here we go again with this whole salary cap world. Love to get your thoughts on that. But I think that's the right decision. I think you want to feel comfortable and confident with your 1 and your 2, Woll and Samsonov. And I think you go back and forth here. I think that makes logical sense.
Yeah, for sure. I think this is going to be a good challenge too, because you're going to look. I think Shesterkin's playing a lot better too. So this is going to be a good challenge. This is like I've been watching his game a bunch, and he is playing really well. And they want to come in there and win. They want to make a statement because this is a team that they could play in the playoffs, and everyone's trying to make that push. It's this time of year. These are kind of like the dog days a bit. I always remember these days when I was playing. It was just like, is it a game or a day off? Is it a game or a day off? They just come at you, and you kind of get into this lull of just like, where are we playing? Where are we doing? Then all of a sudden it's like this giant game, and you're trying to find extra energy, and everyone knows what's at stake. So I think it's going to be a great challenge. And as for the 3-goalie system, I don't mind it because you have a guy in Martin Jones who isn't going to mess around. He's not going to fuck with guys. He's going to just play. He's going to go there, do his thing. Like, the guy's got playoff experience. He's got 63 games played in the playoffs with a .917 save percentage. I know he's older, but there's experience there that he can help these guys deal with things, which is important. And the great part is, I know Martin Jones, he's a great guy. He's not going to go in. He's like me. He's just going to go in and hang out and be normal. And I always had such a good rapport. And I was like, well, it's easy because I just don't do anything stupid. It's these guys that are silver spooners that go in and complain about everything, where Jones is a great guy. He's just going to help these 2 youngsters come playoff time.
Do you have any intel on Matt Murray? You reminded me that you're from the same city. Yeah?
I do. He's been skating. He actually sent me a video of him skating not that long ago one day. We were chatting a little bit, asking what's going on. He just bought a house over by my wife manages a golf club. So he just bought a house out there. So me and him are pretty close. Grew up together, trained together. He won a lot more cups than me, but he's a good dude. So I don't know where he's at. I don't like to bug him. That's more your thing. You got to be the insider. I just let it come to me organically.
Got to be careful. Got to be careful with that. I don't know if you saw this earlier in the week. On Monday, I think it was, Sheldon Keefe said he's progressing. Then on Tuesday, he's nowhere close.
Yeah, you never know what's going on.
It's the same shit. It's like you're damned if you do, damned if you don't. And I think from a salary cap standpoint, I don't know what's going on there. I do not know what's going on there. We know it was like a 6 to 8 month time frame for a recovery here.
Yeah, I'd assume Murray's plans are, because he wants to keep playing, right? He's an athlete, he's a competitive guy. He's not that old. He obviously wants to give a go at it. But I can't see this happening beforehand just because the salary he carries. But at that point, he's got to do what he's got to do. At some point it's going to be his decision. So it'll be interesting. And if he's still got tread left on that tire, he wants to play because he's a competitive guy. And even at times when he did play last year, he was good, until the injury bug kind of took over.
Well, I would add too, there's no cap in the playoffs. Skate with the Black Aces. Skate with the Black Aces. Like, if he's ready to go in the playoffs, just have him on standby. Like, you just never know with this Leafs crease, man.
Honestly, never know. You never know. Like, if Woll was to get hurt and Samsonov is like back on his hiatus being brutal again, and then say you have Martin Jones and Matt Murray, it's like those are 2 pretty good options come like experience wise, right? You're not really going to get veteran guys with that kind of experience outside of, on a team like that, especially with the no cap in the playoffs, right? So you never know, but at the same point, obviously you got to be careful with that salary come early before the playoffs.
Producer Vic makes a great point. Wasn't Aiden Hill like the 4th stringer heading into last year's playoffs for Vegas and wins the cup?
Yeah, he was down the depth chart. So you can never have enough goaltendings, right? That's obviously goaltendings. That's not how you say it anymore. But
no. Matt Murray's going to hoist the Stanley Cup for the Leafs coming up in June. This interview is brought to you by Douglas, named Canada's best mattress on Canadian living. Douglas is loved by more than 200,000 Canadians, and they're backed by over 10,000 5-star reviews. Every mattress order comes with a free comfort sleep bundle, 2 memory foam pillows with pillow protectors, 1 luxurious cotton sheet set, and 1 mattress protector. Order today at Douglas.ca/LMT. That's Douglas.ca, /LMT. TSN hockey insider Darren Dreger now joins us. How's it going, Dregs?
Oh, not bad. A little bit under the weather, so I'm going to choke and spit probably all the way through this interview. But timing is perfect, right?
It is. And sorry to hear you're feeling that way. Hope you feel better soon. How long were the Leafs working on the Lyubushkin deal?
I wouldn't say that long, but kind of typical of the way Brad Treliving does his business. He would have had a number of different calls with Pat Verbeek of the Anaheim Ducks, Danny Briere of the Philadelphia Flyers. Just go down the list of all the available right shot defensemen. I think where it really started to pick up steam is pretty obvious, and that was when Calgary moved Chris Tanev to the Dallas Stars. And then at that point, Treliving decided, okay, well, I can't, leave the trade process here without filling a significant hole on that right side. And they all along had interest in Lyubushkin. Familiarity, reliability, can play with Morgan Riley, just an honest hockey player, and the price was right. So when you look at the face value of how that deal came together, to give up a third and a sixth for Ilya Lyubushkin and 25% salary, I mean, it's the way of the land right now, the way teams are constructing these deals with the third-party brokers. But I think that that's a real efficient bit of business by Brad Treliving in the Toronto Maple Leafs.
Hey, Darren, obviously glad to have you on. Carter Hutton here. And I think what you touched on is so great, like the way the businesses works now and what goes on with these three-way trades. As you see it, they add this piece. Are they done? Or is there something else that the Leafs need to do or want to do, or you think is still in the market here?
They're still in the market. And I think that just about anything is possible. It's all, cost prohibitive, of course. I think they'd like to add another defenseman, and not just because we all saw Mark Giordano go down in a dangerous play last night. You hope the best for the veteran defenseman. But I think that if there's an opportunity to add a depth guy, then most definitely they'll do that. I don't want to close the book on the idea of adding a depth forward, though, either. When you get to this point with the trade deadline looming, it's all about cost effectiveness. So if there's a player that maybe we haven't even speculated on that all of a sudden lands at your feet and you can make it work, not a defenseman, but a forward, well, you make it work. I mean, it's whatever is there that makes your team a little bit better. So I don't think that the Toronto Maple Leafs are done. I don't anticipate that they're in the market for anything significant, but I do think that they'll continue to add.
How close were they on Chris Tanev?
Well, close in the sense that it was insinuated that Treliving was going to lob his first-round pick into the mix, but he never did. So that was what that Crane Conroy and the Calgary Flames were expecting and hoping for. And we know that the Maple Leafs don't have a second-round pick for 3 years, so it became problematic. And, Toronto did not want to cut bait on Easton Cowan or Fraser Minton. So were they involved? Yeah, they were involved, but it would have taken that first-round pick, and Treliving just did not want to give it up. He loved Chris Tanev. There's not too many general managers around the National Hockey League that don't love the character and the game that Chris Tanev can play. But, Toronto's draft cupboard is basically empty. So if you're throwing out first-round draft picks, like traditionally we see this time of year, then you need to be certain. And it's not like Toronto wasn't willing to trade the first, and they're still willing to trade the first. But they need to get back a piece or pieces that at least have a little bit of term and a little bit of security moving forward.
Yeah, so touching on that, like with Tanev gone, does that take Hanifin out of the question because he would have to be a rental player or like a sign and trade, or they just shift their focus to something totally new now?
Yeah, totally new. And look, I mean, you have to kind of consider the history of Brad Treliving, the Calgary Flames, and Noah Hanifin. I mean, he traded for Noah Hanifin with the Carolina Hurricanes. But I don't think that they look at Noah Hanifin in Toronto. I know they don't, as the right fit. And the cost would be too significant. When I think of Noah Hanifin, I'm looking at the Tampa Bay Lightning. I'm looking at the Boston Bruins. I wonder about Boston. I think Boston feels like they got burned a little bit. Leading up to the trade deadline, they made some significant adds. They paid some futures to acquire the pieces that they did last year, and they got bounced early in the playoffs. So I think Don Sweeney is trying to be as careful as he can. But, man, that's a hungry group there too, right? So maybe Cam Neely comes down the hall and says, would you just make the trade? Or ownership of the Boston Bruins. I mean, we can all envision that. Julian Breezeball and the Tampa Bay Lightning, man, they know that window is closing to win another Stanley Cup. Do they have the assets to acquire Noah Hanifin? And look, what is the true rental price for this player? If you're considering an extension, well, then that changes the dynamic of that trade. But I think the next defenseman to go is Sean Walker, of the Philadelphia Flyers. And I want to qualify this a little bit because as I tweeted yesterday, I don't know, this morning, I can't remember. There are contract talks that are ongoing with the Philadelphia Flyers and the agents for both Sean Walker and Nick Seeler. But you do have to continue to have trade conversations and negotiations, because there'll be a breaking point in the extension negotiations, and you have to balance that with what the trade market looks like. And there's a buzz around Sean Walker this morning, and I'm not surprised by that. He's small. That's the feedback you get. He's small, but he's very competitive. He's an excellent teammate. He's incredibly smart. And look at how well he's played for the Philadelphia Flyers. So I wouldn't be surprised if somebody now steps up on him.
Is that a guy you anticipate the Leafs being involved in?
I don't think so. I think Ilya Lyubushkin is their right shot guy. And again, based on what I'm hearing around the trade speculation on Sean Walker, I think the price will be, it'll be too much for Treliving in the Toronto Maple Leafs. If they bolster that blue line further, I think it'll be more of a depth position.
I wanted to ask you too, Dregs, about the whole Toronto tax conversation with Calgary. Like, here we go again with this convo because they didn't get Chris Tanev. Do you subscribe to it? Like, are people making too much of this whole story that Calgary won't trade with Toronto because of Brad Treliving?
Yeah, I don't believe that for a second. I don't. And if Treliving had a second round draft pick, we're probably not having this conversation. And Tanev is a member of the Toronto Maple Leafs. It wasn't a fit because – And I don't mean this to sound critical of Kyle Dubas, because Kyle Dubas, as general manager of the Leafs, was trying to win a Stanley Cup. So he dealt away a lot of quality draft picks, in an effort to make the team better. But that left Brad Treliving with very little to work with. And that's just the situation. I'm sure that there's some history there between Murray Edwards, the owner of the Calgary Flames, and Brad Treliving. But I must ask that question 5 times in the last 2 months of my Calgary sources, and they assured that was not the case. End of the day, guys, the owners have to allow their hockey operations people to do their jobs. And it's always about getting the best deal possible. And clearly Conroy felt like that best deal was involving the New Jersey Devils, and Tanev ultimately ending in Dallas.
Yeah. So Darren, for me, like the East just seems so open this year compared to, there hasn't really anyone. We touched on Florida being good and Boston, but no one's really been like that absolute powerhouse. And with Austin Matthews kind of in that wheelhouse of like, kind of win now mentality where they're at, he's at his peak. Does that first rounder come into play this year, or is that something we don't see moved? We just kind of just wondering like where they're at. You think the Leafs like winning now?
Yeah, well, I think they have to be in that win now mode, right? Because when you look to the near future, you see the contract battles that they may or may not have to have with Mitch Marner and then John Tavares. I mean, we know the salary cap is going up next year, but that's basically been gobbled up by Nylander and Matthews. So Toronto is going to be in a real salary cap vice next year. The cap will go up, significantly following that. But when you've got the talent level that the Maple Leafs have, especially up front, doesn't it feel like you have to try and win every single year? Because if you don't, a couple of years, 3 years from now, you'll be looking back and you'll be like, geez, we should have really dug in. And then that's what everybody is in it for, including the managers and ownership, is to win, to hoist that Stanley Cup. So I'm doubtful that the first rounder will get traded. But fellas, we're a week outside of March 8th. We don't know. We think we know. We've got trade bait graphics all over the place that tell us, here are the players in play, but we still don't know who the sellers are by definition. I mean, look at the standings. We still don't know, all of a sudden a player like Pavel Buchnevich, from the St. Louis Blues pops onto your radar and it takes a first round draft pick to acquire him. Maybe you try and make the money work because it makes so much sense. So I don't think they'll trade that pick, but I can't be certain until the bell rings next Friday.
Like, Dregs, I'm right there with you. I think there's a bunch of teams like in the gray area right now, which don't know what they are. Like, I would throw Washington in that conversation. Like, they think they're in it, but are they? Like Seattle, St. Louis, teams
100%.
like that. And I think if players and those teams define themselves as sellers, I think all hell could break loose. Because I mean, with the Leafs specifically, there's some guys on St. Louis, guys on Seattle, and teams like that, even Washington, that could make a lot of sense to add. Namely on the blue line, no?
No question about that. And guys, I think it's going to be fun watching the power struggle in the next week for some of the top forwards that are in play here. As I reported yesterday, you've got Mark Stone, who's out for the rest of the regular season. He's questionable for the playoffs. Well, do we honestly think that Kelly McCrimmon and the Vegas Golden Knights aren't going to utilize that cap space? Of course they are, in an effort to try and defend the Stanley Cup. So what are the forwards that we're looking at? I mentioned Buchnevich. Jordan Eberle, to your point, Nick, Seattle isn't trading anyone. If you talk to sources who have tried to lure pieces out of Seattle, but, they do have to look at the contract of Jordan Eberle. There's an appetite to sign him, so that might take him out of play. What's New Jersey doing with Tyler Toffoli? The Devils they're out of it, but they're not entirely out of it in terms of being a wild card team here. So, do you trade away a guy that's got 25 plus goals for you at this stage of the year? So those players are in play. I'm looking at Edmonton. I'm looking at Vegas. I'm looking for all the top teams. The New York Rangers. Go down the list of all these really, really good teams that are trying to add another top piece. I think it's going to be a fun week.
Dregs, we'll see what happens. Thank you so much for making the time today. Feel better soon. Okay, bud?
All right, guys. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Darren.
Anytime. That is Darren Dreger of TSN. Just always brings the heat. We appreciate him. Take some time, especially when he's sick. And I'm sure a fun time of year for insiders, also a busy time of year. Huts, like that phone must be buzzing nonstop.
Yeah, I know, it's nuts. I feel like for me, even my time when I remember the trade when I was in St. Louis, we were kind of one of those teams we touched on that was like, where are we going? And I remember we were in Minnesota, and I was potentially going to get traded, or I wasn't sure. We were like in between. We ended up making the playoffs, but we traded Paul Stastny away. And I remember our team instantly like took a hit. We were just like, oh man, we're selling the farm. Where, you had Lyubushkin last night, where these teams that are still not sure where they're going, this is a big time of year for players as well, right? You're not necessarily watching it. If you're on a bad team, you're kind of expecting to get traded or knowing you might get traded. Where I think for some of these guys, it like sends a message to your team when your GM makes a move and you're like, okay, he believes in us. This is something we can build around, right? So it's going to be exciting. I think there's lots to come here. And like he touched on, you never know what's going to happen.
No, and it's funny you brought up Doug Armstrong, a man you're familiar with. Like that guy every year, man, is the wild card of all wild cards, man. He could say somebody's unavailable. Next thing you know, Colton Parayko's out the door. Buchnevich is out the door. You just never know with the St. Louis Blues. And I'm happy you brought that up because I think it's so important to humanize the situation. Even everybody knows I got a buddy in Anaheim. He's going to get dealt in the next week. Just had his second baby. Like going through that, I can only wonder, the type of toll that plays on somebody's like human aspect and their life, and outside of the game. Right. So I think it's important just to talk about that. Like what's it like as a player around deadline time, even if you're not going, like just the room in general, what's the feel?
I think for the most part, when you're on a team like Toronto, it's not as bad because you're just like, okay, we're going to add a piece or like, we're not going to get traded. You're trying not to be consumed by it. I feel like it's trickier when you're on a team that's already losing. If you're on like the San Jose Sharks or, Anaheim Ducks or Chicago Blackhawks, like everybody's in play, like pretty much other than your core stars. So it is a bit anxious, right? Because you talk about guys that are either young in their careers who think they have a future with the team, or an older guy who has family, who has kids, and like when you move, it's tricky, right? For me, I always remember, like I got traded, it was more of a deal that we had set up, but I always remember free agency, same idea in the sense of, I'm trying to figure out, I have this short window where I'm going to go. And I remember when I went to St. Louis, they had traded Brian Elliott the night before. I remember hanging out. I got a call from my agent and I had no clue I was going anywhere, but I thought it was Buffalo or Dallas or something. And literally that night, I just got a call and it's like, hey, you're going to St. Louis. Like they're going to sign you tomorrow. And I'm like, this is the best deal. And you're like, so these are what these guys deal with, right? You're just sitting there and all of a sudden your whole world is boom, gone. And I don't think people really understand that in the sense of they just watch TV. They just see them go to the rink, but they don't know like where your kid goes to the dentist. You don't see your family anymore. Like Lyubushkin's not going to see his kids anymore. Like they're going to have to fly in and see him. He's not going to get to live with them anymore. Like there's big effects they have on this guy. So it's a tricky time of year. But this is the business we sign up for. I don't want to sound hard done by any means, because when you make lots of money, lots is expected. But yeah, it's a tricky time and it's wild for sure.
Where'd you get traded again? Was it Toronto?
Yeah, I got traded from Arizona to Toronto.
Yeah, because that was the running joke. You finished your career as a member of the Toronto Maple Leafs, right? Where they just like pack your shit, you're gone, bud.
No, I kind of got traded and then I stayed there
Yeah,
and
I remember that.
yeah, it was good. I had a good life, man. And then Mrazek got Jack Campbell was out walking his cat. I don't know. There was a bunch
Oh,
of shit went
fuck.
down. And then they brought me in. It was mint. I went out. They gave me so much. I got more gear in Toronto than I got when I was the starter in Buffalo. It was just like, here, you got sticks. They sent me home with so much shit. I think I own half a plate against sports because I sold it all there.
Man, I couldn't believe it. My brother's a goalie, and I asked Huts for a stick, and he's like, I got nothing left. But maybe it's because I hang out with Toronto people where it's like they got shit out the ass. Like you just got so much gear, like till you're blue in the face. Like it's nuts.
Yeah, it's nuts. That's one thing that is nice about like playing in a big market where they just give stuff away. Like it's just not an expense, right? Because it's not
Yeah.
against the cap and they have so much extra money. Where like there was times I used to joke when I was in Nashville, I used to go in and like if I tried to get a glove, I'd like read the equipment manager. Like my glove's like falling apart. I'd be like, hey, does Pekka have any old gloves maybe I could use? Because my hand is bruised. Like I'm making $1 million a year and I can't even get a goddamn glove. Like it's wild, man. Different markets, but that's just, they run it like a business. That's just the way it works.
So final question on the deadline. You good? You happy with the Leafs crease?
I do. I'm really happy with the Leafs
Yeah.
crease. I think it's going to be good. Samsonov is just a big question mark for me. I feel like it's going to be Woll. I hope Samsonov can find it so they can both push each other. But I think with these three guys, you got to be happy. And Woll being healthy now and really having a great performance. Let's just manage his minutes moving forward, right? He doesn't play every single game, and if it's not him, even mix Martin Jones in there if Samsonov is struggling.
The Betano wrap-up is presented by Betano.ca. The game starts now, 19 plus. Please play responsibly. Major announcement, Betano is the official partner of Copa America 2024, taking the beautiful game to new heights in the Americas. Join Betano on their journey of passion, unity, and unforgettable football moments. What do you think the odds are of a Rempe-Reeves scrap on Saturday night? I think it's pretty high.
Yeah, like I don't know, this poor kid. Like this is like he's fought some tough guys already. This is the big stage. I can't see him backing down, and I think Rivos will like it. But I just don't want this kid to just keep eating punches and punches, right? Because there's a human side of it, right? This guy's got a lot of life ahead of him, but I can't see him what he's gone through already. I think this is a big stage for him. I'm sure he'll enjoy it.
I think I'm reading the chat. Somebody wrote Rempe's hurt, so maybe he doesn't play in that game. That would suck. I've been waiting
Yeah, that
all
would.
week for this scrap.
Yeah, maybe he's hurt. I wonder how he got hurt. Maybe just
I don't know. Maybe it's a leg injury.
Yeah. I should have between his ears, but yeah, I don't know. Obviously, this kid's making a name for him, but I respect him, right? Like, you get a chance, and like, man, you only get one. Like, it's kind of like I feel like I played for Corey Schwab, goalie coach, used to
Yeah.
play, and we always just talk about you don't know when your opportunity is coming, and when you get it, you have to be ready. And you get called up from the minors. At least this guy's putting his hat. Like, say he never plays again. Say he gets sent down, but at least he went up there and did what he had to do to try to have an impact on the team, right? Because not many guys get lots of chances unless you're like a first round silver spooner.
That's fair. Rempe is on the ice for the Rangers skate today, so I made sure I did my research on that one. Anything you like betting-wise tonight or tomorrow for that Leafs-Rangers game? I like the Devils take care of Anaheim in regulation. Maybe you look at an Adam Henrique point, former Devil in that game, so I'd probably play that as well. But the Leafs-Rangers game, I think, figures to maybe be a low-scoring affair, considering everything you just mentioned about Igor Shesterkin.
Yeah, my thing is it'll be interesting. The Samsonov will be the question mark. If he starts, if Woll starts, I love the under. I love that being a really tight game, even like an overtime game. If Samsonov starts, I'm just nervous with the way he's playing right now, where it goes. And tonight, I just think Ottawa pounds Arizona. I just think Vamelka is just
I jumped
struggling.
on Arizona. I want to see the Sens lose that game so badly.
I love Vamelka, but he is just in a pickle. Like I just think he's struggling a lot, but I'm excited for this Rangers Leafs game. I'm not going to lie. This is going to be a good one here, Nikki.
Yeah, 8 of 9 for the Leafs. I believe 11 of the last 12 for the New York Rangers. Lastly, do you think Sheldon Keefe got his money's worth for the fine? Like that was funny to me. Is like he didn't even elaborate post game. Like if you're going to get fined $25,000, which I hope, by the way, the organization covers, they better. But like he didn't even elaborate. Like if you're going to get fined, might as well like go all in the fine. Like I thought he took the high road and still got fined. It was sad.
Yeah, I was surprised he got fined. Like, I feel like that's BS. Like, it's so soft. Like, I actually had my notes here. Like, I was just like, it's so soft, league. Like, who cares, man? That's part of the game. Is like the refs engage too. You don't think the ref is telling you to F off and shut your mouth, and like they engage in it too, right? So to get the fine but Keefe honestly is wearing, man, like it's like the president of the United States. Whoever when you start your term, like you're looking good. You're looking, well, not Joe Biden, but like majority of presidents, and then you end your shift, you're like, oh man, that aged you a lot. And you're looking at Keefe, man, it is wearing on him being the head coach of this hockey team.
Yeah, Biden started his term looking 90. He looks 99 now. I think is the case on Biden. But yeah, like it's wearing away at him. I was just sort of baffled. And I think on top of that, correct me if I'm wrong, the max fine for a player is 5K. Why is it 25 for a coach?
I don't know. I don't know why that is,
Explain
but
that to me, Huts.
the 5K is awesome when there's like a slash, like you chop a guy's head off and you get 5K, and a coach tells you to go F yourself and you get the 25K. I don't know, it's not fair. And usually, well, I guess Keith makes they all make lots of money now too, but it seems
Yeah.
they like pick and choose, right? I know it must be a league thing, right? Because they just want to be in control and they want anyone standing out and making like bad comments about the league. But he took the high road off the ice. No one know what he said on the rink.
Pat Quinn must be rolling in his grave, man. Pat Burns, like you remember that era? It's like gum spitting out, like fuck, it's game over and nothing. The league doesn't even text you, doesn't even email you after the game. It's fine. And now you say, "Hey, you're a bad ref." It's like 25K. It's like, holy, what are we doing, man? What has happened to this sport, Huts?
I used to joke all the time when I played for Peter Laviolette. He used to have like an energy drink before the game, and I'd be like sitting on the bench. And in Nashville, they put you like in the middle of the bench. There's like this little half boards by the glass, and I'm like, this guy's ticker's gonna go, man. Like he is so nuts. His face is going. He's just going crazy, and he's yelling at every play. I'm like, man, if he drops, we better get the medical staff in here because he's so intense every game. And I'm like game 55. I'm like half asleep, like just want to go in the room and popcorn. And this guy's just going absolutely bonkers because he just chugged a Red Bull before the period.
Yeah, I would just say, be happy you didn't play for Mike Babcock because you're counting faceoffs on that bench as a backup goalie, which was just a fucking joke and just made so much about in the media. I mean, I could not believe it. But anyways, something tells me Mike Babcock is not going to be back in the NHL anytime soon. Huts, thank you so much for this pretty busy day of chatter. Darren Dreger hopped on too. Ilya Lyubushkin's a member of the Maple Leafs. The next week should be pretty fun, eh?
Yeah, it should be good. It should be a lot of fun. So looking forward to it. It's a good time of year, and then tight hockey, right? That's all we can ask for, and hopefully some trades happen.
And the best thing about it, the Leafs are on fire. They've won 8 of 9, facing off against the New York Rangers coming up on Saturday night. Thank you to everybody in the chat. You guys are fantastic. Great week at the Leafs Nation 401, where you can subscribe, pound that like button, pound that subscribe button. Leafs Morning Take, wherever you find your podcast as well. Make sure to leave us a 5-star review. Many thanks to producer Vic and also today's guest, Darren Dreger of TSN. That's Carter Hutton. I'm Nick Alberga. Back on Monday. Take care. Make sure to check out more of our content right here on the Leafs Nation YouTube page. We got long form interviews, we got clips, we got epic rants by Jay Rosa. We simply have it all. And don't forget, you can find out much more at theleafsnation.com. Thanks so much for watching.